After our family reunion, I checked my account. It was gone, every cent, $95,000, drained overnight, leaving only $768 staring back at me in pale blue numbers. For a long moment, the air in my lungs turned to glass. My gaze locked on the pale blue numbers, feeling their chill seep through the screen and into my bones, a cold so deep it felt like it could stop my heart. That number didn't belong to me. It felt like I'd stumbled into someone else's nightmare, someone else's name on the account. But no, it was mine. My name. My savings. My future. Gone. My father leaned back in his leather recliner, the same one he had refused to throw away for years, smirking like a gambler who'd finally drawn the card he'd been waiting for. Think of it as an investment in the family, he said, the words smooth and practiced. Money has to move, Robert. It wasn't doing anyone any good just sitting there. I gripped the strap of my bag, my knuckles whitening. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Then you won't mind what happens next. They laughed. My father's laugh was sharp, too loud. My mother's thinner, high-pitched, an echo of his. Certain, cruel, absolutely sure I was still theirs to use. Then came the pounding on the front door, 3 heavy knocks that rattled the frame, a sound that split the air like thunder. That was the moment I realized everything I thought I knew about family had already collapsed. It hadn't started that night, though. It had started days earlier, on the road south. The first Saturday in May was already sweltering, the Texas sun turning I-35 into a ribbon of mirage and glare. My AC rattled on full blast, but sweat still gathered at the back of my neck. With one hand on the wheel and the other tapping nervously against my thigh, I kept repeating the line Dr. Sharma had drilled into me during therapy: go with boundaries. No expectations. Just observe. It sounded simple in her office. Out here, in the rising heat, with my childhood pressing closer mile by mile, it felt impossible. To the left, the hill country rolled out in soft hills peppered with live oaks and mesquite. To the right, suburbs multiplied endlessly, cul-de-sacs stamped from the same mold, beige roofs and turquoise pools, lawns cropped within an inch of their lives. I wasn't driving south for reconciliation. I wasn't going to let them wrap me in the sticky web of nostalgia. I was there to measure, to test the truth against their words, to prove to myself that I could walk in, observe, and walk back out untouched. By the time I reached the gates of their new community outside San Antonio, the sun had baked the asphalt into a skillet. A guard waved me through with a glance at the visitor pass clipped to my dash. As I turned into their street, the house loomed, 2 stories of beige stone and gleaming glass, manicured lawn, and an infinity pool winking from the backyard. For years I'd heard about overdue bills, broken vents, carpet too worn to walk barefoot on. If they were drowning, this was the most luxurious drowning I'd ever seen. Carol greeted me first. My mother's arms spread wide, perfume hitting me before her smile did. She kissed my cheek with a softness that felt rehearsed. "Robert!" she sang, drawing out the name like we hadn't spoken in months instead of weeks. Michael appeared behind her, crisp polo shirt, khakis pressed, his grin tilted just so. He could sell anyone on anything, had been doing it for decades at the dealership. Strangers called it charm. I called it performance. The house hummed with voices and the smell of mesquite from the grill. I catalogued every detail that didn't match their stories of desperation: the polished tile, a cousin's brand new laptop, and uncle bragging about his beach rental in Port Aransas. If they were drowning, this was the most luxurious drowning I'd ever seen. Michael leaned toward me, his voice low, faux confidential. "Had a great month. Big fleet deal dropped right in my lap. And your mom's little freelance gig, about to really move." He made air quotes with 2 fingers, chuckling. Carol's interrogation began before the brisket cooled. Salary. Bonuses. Condo plans in Austin. What stocks I held. She nodded at each answer, masking the probe with a smile. Every question disguised as support. Jake, my cousin, slipped beside me with a plate of chips and salsa, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something's off. They've been asking me about your money all week." Every detail. The knot in my gut pulled tighter. I smiled anyway. I'm fine, I lied. Just observe, I reminded myself. The sun sank lower, the pool behind us glowing like molten glass. Around the table, laughter rose and smoke curled upward into the warm air. For a moment, if you didn't look too close, it almost looked like family. Almost. Dinner stretched into dusk. The backyard glowed with string lights, laughter spilling from every corner. Brisket's smoke lingered, sweet and heavy, while mosquitoes whined around the citronella candles. From the outside, it was a perfect family evening, warmth, food, and conversation. Inside me, though, there was only tension. Carol placed a glass of red wine in front of me. Just one, she said, her tone casual but insistent. Stay the night. It will be fun, like old times. I hesitated. I don't usually drink before driving back. She tilted her head, smile sharp at the edges. Then don't drive. We have plenty of room. Michael raised his own glass. To family, he announced. The words weren't a toast, they were a command. His eyes locked onto mine, daring me not to drink. I lifted the glass. The first sip burned more than it should have, bitterness clinging to the back of my tongue. Conversations blurred at the edges, laughter echoing as if from far away. My mother's hand hovered near the bottle, always ready to refill. Kevin was bragging about his laptop. Uncle Frank recited the same story about sunsets he'd already told twice. My cousins scrolled their phones. Everything ordinary, yet everything wrong. I tried to stand, but my legs were heavy. My chest fluttered unsteady. I need water, I muttered, but no one heard. The couch seemed to rise toward me. The ceiling stretched away. Laughter floated from a great distance, warped and slow. My last clear memory was of Carol's smile, too bright, as lamplight refracted through the ruby liquid she tilted toward my glass. The ceiling didn't just stretch away, it began to breathe, and I was sinking into the couch, into the floor, into a thick and dreamless black. I woke to silence, the kind that belongs only to the hours before dawn, when houses breathe and shadows stretch. My mouth was dry, my tongue metallic. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, its screen stabbing light into the dark. The balance didn't fit inside my head. Yesterday, $95,680. Now, $768. I blinked hard, as if the numbers might realign if I looked long enough. But no, the digits held steady, merciless. I scrolled. Transfer. 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 Each line carried the same rhythm. Between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., one after another, draining everything. Each authorized by my device. My chest hitched. My scalp tingled cold. This wasn't just money. This was 12 years of busbus shifts, night stalking, cheap cars with sputtering engines, apartments with windows that rattled when trucks passed. Every dollar I saved was a step away from them, away from dependence. My down payment for a life of my own. Now gone. I pressed both palms flat to the nightstand, grounding myself. The panic roared, but Dr. Sharma's voice cut through it. Document. I moved with cold purpose, screenshotting every transfer and backing the logs to my external drive. I filmed the gleaming house, proof against their pleas of poverty, and photographed my moved notebook, treating every detail like evidence from a crime scene. The rage came later. First there was only the cold, hollow disbelief. At 6:14 a.m., I dialed Aunt Claire. She answered groggy but alert, her voice carrying that steady calm I'd leaned on as a child. Claire, I croaked, my throat dry. It's gone. All of it. 95,000. Silence. Then a breath heavy with grief. Your mother, she said something last week about a windfall coming. I didn't understand. I didn't want to. Her words broke something loose inside me. I wanted her to say it couldn't be true. She couldn't. Next, David. He didn't waste time with sympathy. If you argue with them, they'll twist it. If you beg, they'll deny it. File a report. Let the law speak. His voice was steady, practical, the kind of anchor I needed. He listed steps like a surgeon, screenshots, metadata, full login request from the bank. And Robert, get out of that house quietly. Don't give them a chance to spin the story. When I hung up, my phone lit with a new message. We were only trying to protect you. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Protect. The word twisted like a knife. Protect me from what? Freedom? Independence? Protect themselves, maybe. Not me. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. For a moment, the old reflex tugged, the child inside me reaching for compromise, anything to stop the conflict. But then I remembered the piggy bank smashed when I was 7. The bike pawned when I was 12. The shoebox of savings thinned when I was 16. Always the same promise, we'll pay you back. We just need one break. That break had stretched my whole life. I put the phone face down. My boundary was already written. The sun lifted slowly over the cul-de-sac, turning the trimmed hedges a sterile gold. In the guest room, I zipped my backpack with deliberate care, the way you do when you're leaving a place for the last time. Wallet. Keys. External drive. Evidence printed to PDF and mirrored twice. I took one last slow video sweep of the room, the nightstand, the door, the hall beyond, time-stamping everything. Down the hallway the house was hushed, a stage waiting for actors to hit their marks. The pool light cast a wavering aqua across the kitchen ceiling. Somewhere outside, a sprinkler chattered like a metronome. I moved quietly, every step a decision. I wasn't running. I was leaving. I had my hand on the doorknob when a floorboard popped behind me. Going somewhere? Michael's voice was casual, stretched into something like humor. I turned. He stood in the doorway in a pressed polo, and the kind of smug calm that had sold 1,000 cars. Carol hovered just behind him, a robe tied tight, eyes bright with something that wasn't quite concern. Early meeting, I said. Back in Austin. Carol reached for performance first. You should eat before you go. I made a frittata. I watched her mouth form the lie and felt nothing. Not rage. Not fear. Just a clean, flat line inside me, boundary made real. I'm all set. Michael's gaze flicked to my bag. You're worked up over nothing, he said, tone turning parental corrective. We talked about this. Family needs come first. That money's not gone. It's in the family. Not your call, I said, and the steadiness in my voice surprised even me. Not your money. His jaw clenched. I saw the switch flip from charming to dangerous. You think you're better than us now? Because you answer to some therapist and some lawyer? You wouldn't have anything without us. I let the words fall dead on arrival. 12 years of savings is not without you. It's despite you. For a beat, none of us breathed. Carol's expression hardened. Don't make this bigger than it is, Robbie, she said softly, the old nickname wrapped around a threat. We were protecting you from making a terrible mistake. You're impulsive with money. I thought of the years of packed lunches, the car with the blinking check engine light, the cramped apartment with thin walls and thicker hope. I thought of the studio with white walls I'd planned to buy. Impulsive. The word might have been funny if it hadn't been so obscene. I've filed the report, I said. And I've preserved the logs. You used my fingerprint while I slept. So this is bigger than you're pretending, whether you like it or not. Michael laughed once, short and brittle. You called the cops on your own parents? You ungrateful. We'll let the law decide what to call it, I said, and stepped past him. In the car, my hands shook around the steering wheel until they didn't. The road opened. I drove without music, without talk radio, just the white noise of tires on asphalt. In Austin, I met David and Aunt Claire at a coffee shop on South Congress, a place with cement floors, huge windows, the smell of espresso and burnt sugar. We slid into a corner table like conspirators. David had already opened his laptop. We're going straight to the bank's fraud desk and the sheriff with everything you've documented, David said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Then we file an emergency motion to freeze their accounts before that money disappears." He spoke in crisp bullet points, and the world found its edges again. Aunt Claire set a thick manila envelope on the table and pushed it toward me. "These are receipts and notes from the last 10 years," she said. "Times your parents borrowed and didn't return. Dates, amounts, my notes from calls with your mother. I should have given them to you sooner. I'm sorry." "You're here now," I said. The words came out rough. We worked for hours, printing, highlighting, numbering exhibits, stapling affidavits, cross-checking dates. It felt less like building a case than like assembling a life that someone had tried to scatter. At one point I realized my hand hadn't left the strap of my backpack since we'd sat down. A lifeline. When the clerk at the sheriff's office took my report, she read it twice, eyes steady but kind. "You did the right thing coming in with documentation," she said. "Most people wait until there's nothing left to trace." Back at the coffee shop, David's phone buzzed. He listened, nodded, then covered the mic. "Bank's fraud supervisor on the line. They see the 2:08 a.m., 2:27 a.m., 2:52 a.m., 3:20 a.m., and 3:44 a.m. authorizations. All with your device ID, all geolocated to their address. They also see multiple failed attempts at 1:56 a.m., likely the first tries while you were still in a deeper sleep cycle. We're green for an emergency freeze motion." "Do it," I said. That evening, we drove back to San Antonio. The house looked the way a mirage looks when you know it's not real: glossy, insubstantial, mean. Claire stood beside me. David walked a step ahead, a folder under his arm. My heart thudded, but beneath it, a calmer rhythm beat: procedure, facts, next right thing. Inside, the air had that brittle chill that comes from a thermostat set too low to impress guests. Michael waited in the living room, arms folded like a bouncer. Carol perched on the couch, lips pressed white. I placed a neat stack of printed logs on the coffee table. "These are the authorizations from my account," I said. "While I slept here." Michael snorted. "We're not going to play courtroom in my living room." "We don't have to," I said. "You think you can shame us into giving you back what you gifted?" Carol asked, voice quivering in a way the rest of her face didn't. "We raised you. We sacrificed for you. The only thing you taught me was how to budget for your next emergency," I said. "That's a kind of raising, I guess." The knock came then, 3 precise strikes that made the frame jump. Not thunder. Not chaos. Procedure. A sheriff's deputy stepped in when David opened the door, badge catching the recessed lights. He held a folder. "Michael and Carol Miller?" he said, voice even. "We have an emergency order authorizing a temporary freeze on your accounts pending investigation into alleged financial fraud and unauthorized transfer of funds." For a long second, nobody moved. Then Michael's face did something I'd never seen. His features sagged and then hardened, like concrete cracking and setting again. Carol's hands flew to her chest. Her mouth opened on a sound that didn't quite become a sob. The deputy placed the documents by my logs and looked at me once. "We'll be in touch," he said, and left with the same calm with which he'd entered. Silence stretched. Then Uncle Frank, drawn by some sixth sense for spectacle, stuck his head in from the patio. He took in the scene and jabbed a finger at me. "You brought police into this house? We settle family matters as family. Family doesn't drug relatives and empty their accounts," David said without looking at him. Kevin hovered near the hallway, the brand new laptop box tucked under his arm like a shield. He stared at me, then at the papers, and something in his face crumpled. He crossed the carpet, set the box on the floor at my feet, and nudged it forward without meeting my eyes. It slid until it touched my shoe. "Keep it," I said softly. "Buy it again, with your own money." He flinched. Then he nodded and took it back, cheeks flushed with a shame that wasn't mine to carry. Carol found her footing first, she always did. She stood, eyes bright with curated grief. "I only wanted to care for this family," she said, voice rising. "I wanted to keep us safe. How could you do this to your mother? You didn't care for the family, I said, my voice low, steady. You stole the only future I'd built. Her hand flew to her mouth like I'd struck her. Frank muttered, ungrateful. Another aunt murmured about blood and loyalty. Claire stepped up on my right, David on my left. Jake, who had driven down as soon as I texted, arrived at the doorway, eyes red, jaw tight, and put a warm, heavy palm on my shoulder. You're not alone, he said, and the words were a bridge back to myself. That night the posts began. Carol's Facebook. My son dragged the police into our home and branded us criminals. My heart is broken. Comments bloomed like mold, neighbors, cousins, the bored and the sanctimonious. Kids these days have no respect. Parents give everything. Disgusting. Aunt Susan, Carol's sister, wrote the line that hurt because it aimed for the softest part. Robert has destroyed this family's honor. I stared at the words until they blurred, then closed the screen. If you stay silent, they'll write the story for you, Jake said from my kitchen doorway. If you say anything, they'll call you cruel. I'm done performing for them, I said. The audience can boo. David poured tap water into 2 glasses and slid one to me. Next step is court, he said. It's slower than you want and faster than you fear. Hold your line. I raised the glass like a vow. I will. Courthouses smell like old wood and stale coffee. The morning of the hearing, I sat on a bench in a corridor painted in a shade of beige designed to control emotion. Claire squeezed my hand. Jake paced like a caged runner. David reviewed a checklist, pen tapping the margin in a calm, irritating metronome. They'll argue it was a gift, he said. They'll lean on culture, filial duty, anything to make the judge think this is a family misunderstanding. We have logs, geolocation, biometrics, your statement, timelines, the wine, the texts. Facts are boring, but they win. When our case was called, the courtroom felt both too large and too small. My parents took their seats at the opposite table. Michael wore a suit that didn't fit his posture. Carol wore grief like a veil. Their lawyer, a man with a silver tie and the voice of someone who believes he can talk gravity into taking a day off, stood first. Your Honor, he began. This is a tragic case of a family at odds. The funds at issue were given freely by a son who has always been generous. My clients never coerced or misled their child. They love him. He has turned on them with the support of outsiders. He glanced at David like the word lawyer was a slur. Thank you, the judge said, voice dry. She turned to David. Counsel? David's opening was plain. He didn't gild it. While asleep in his parents' home, my client's account was emptied in 5 unauthorized transfers, each authorized by his fingerprint, geolocated to their address. The timing aligns with corroborated accounts of intoxication and sleep. The defendants also made social posts attempting to pressure and shame my client into silence. We are asking the court to protect the status quo, maintain the freeze, and order the return of funds pending further proceedings. He could have been reading a grocery list. Somehow it felt like mercy. I testified. The room fell away as I described the wine's bitterness, the thickening air, the weight in my legs, the numbers on my phone that didn't fit in my mind. I spoke about years of saving, the sputtering car, the cramped apartments, the overtime. I tried not to make a closing argument out of my whole life. I tried to stay with the facts. Carol cried at precise intervals. Michael watched me with a look that said I was a story he planned to rewrite as soon as I stopped talking. Their lawyer stood. Mr. Miller, he said syrupy, do you love your parents? Yes, I said, because the simplest version of the truth was the only one that didn't corrupt me. I do. Then why weaponize the law against them? Why not talk it through? Why not accept that, in families, money flows both ways? In our family, love was always used as a reason for control, I said. Boundaries are what make it real. I didn't weaponize the law. I used it as the boundary you refused to respect. He lifted a brow like a magician about to spring a trick. Isn't it true you have been generous with your parents in the past? Gifts on holidays? Support during job changes? Yes, I said, and watched his smile flicker. Gifts I chose. Not biometric theft while I slept. A beat. He pivoted. No one forced you to drink at dinner. No one told me the wine came with an empty bank account. I said. He sighed, as if I had disappointed him by refusing to be easy. No further questions. Then Jake took the stand. He didn't dress his words, he just placed them down like bricks. My uncle told me he planned to use Robert's savings to buy into a poker operation. He was excited. He said, "It's just family money anyway." I told him it wasn't his. He said, "He'll get over it." The courtroom went still. I heard someone in the gallery exhale like a tire losing air. Carol's tears stopped. Michael's jaw flexed once, twice. Their lawyer objected to something out of reflex. The judge overruled him without looking up from her notes. The bank's fraud supervisor testified by video about device IDs, IP logs, and geolocation. Facts stacked neatly. Boring soldiers, winning a boring war. Finally, the judge spoke. "I am maintaining the freeze," she said. "I am ordering restitution to begin immediately, pending final resolution. I am also referring the file to the district attorney for review of potential criminal charges. Families are not free of law. Court is adjourned." The gavel didn't thunder. It clicked, a small sound, almost gentle. My knees were shaking when I stood. Outside on the courthouse steps, the sun hit my face like a benediction I no longer expected from people. Reporters asked questions I didn't answer. Claire slipped sunglasses onto my face with a mother's tenderness. David clapped my shoulder once, a rare smile loosening his features. Jake hugged me hard enough to bruise. "It isn't over," he said. "I know," I said. "But the worst part is." He nodded. "Yeah. It is." The criminal case didn't become a TV drama. It moved through the system with the same boring, relentless logic as everything else. In the end, my parents accepted a plea: financial fraud, identity theft. 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, full restitution schedule. No prison. No cinematic justice. Just a narrow road laid out in monthly payments, and court dates, and the slow erosion of a lie. The day the first restitution transfer hit my account, I stared at the number for a long time. Relief didn't wash over me. Instead, there was a hollow ache, the kind you feel when a surgeon tells you the tumor is gone but leaves you with a new scar to learn. Online, Carol kept posting. The algorithm supplied its chorus: grief emojis and bile. I stopped reading. You don't heal by reopening the wound for applause or condemnation. Therapy shifted from crisis tactics to building. Dr. Sharma asked me, "What does safety look like in practice?" I started answering with nouns instead of metaphors. Contracts. Locks that click. Bank alerts. Friends who show up. A studio with white walls and high windows where no one could rewrite my memory. Sundays moved to Aunt Claire's house in Boulder when she decided she'd had enough of Texas humidity. Her dining table stretched under roasts and salads and the kind of laughter that arrives without a price tag. David came sometimes with wine and the wry stories of a man who has seen every trick and remains undecorated by cynicism. Jake talked solar panels and hiring welders and crashing at my place when he drove down for investors. Once, after dinner, Claire told me she had something to confess. "When you were 17, she said, eyes bright but steady, "I helped you open a small account in your name only. Your mother went through your backpack the next day. I caught her with the cash I'd slipped in for books. I took it back and put it in the account. I've kept it quiet all these years. I should have told you. I wanted you to know someone was on your side." I put my head in my hands and laughed, the good kind that comes on a tide of tears. I wasn't alone. I said into my palms. "You never were," she said. In my Austin loft, rented first then owned, I hung the first poster I'd designed as an intern in a simple black frame. In one corner, canvases leaned like quiet futures. On a shelf, I set a blue porcelain rocket ship piggy bank. Not to hold coins. To hold the promise I made to a 7-year-old who watched his father smash a different rocket on a linoleum floor and learned, too early, how to sweep. On my 31st birthday, the loft filled with the voices of people who had nothing to gain from loving me. Claire sliced cake. David argued about old movies with Jake. Someone's kid fell asleep on my couch with a crust of icing on their cheek. When the candles flickered, I made a wish I said aloud, because secrecy had cost me enough. I wish, I said, to keep choosing the people who choose me back. Done, Jake said, tapping his glass with a fork like a verdict. Later, when the apartment was quiet and the city's low hum threaded through the windows, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and spoke softly into the kind of silence you earn. Blood gave me life. But love I had to find, build, protect. Love refuses theft and calls it by its name. Love presses charges and also passes bread. Love draws lines and invites people to meet you on the right side of them. My journey isn't a ladder, healing isn't up or down. It's a spiral I keep walking, seeing the same landmarks from a clearer height. Some days I can look back without flinching. Some days grief taps my shoulder and asks to be walked around the block. Both kinds of days count. Family isn't made of blood, but of the people who stand with you when it matters most. It's the people who pass you bread and help you press charges. The ones who meet you on the right side of the boundaries you draw. The world will always try to tell you what love is. I've learned to decide for myself and let my choices be the only evidence I need. If you're part of the family we're building here, hit like and subscribe to join our community.